years of record low precipitation. Worse yet, the predictions about when or if our water will be replenished are dismaying.
We Americans are spoiled. When we wake up in the morning, we turn on that tap, and out comes as much water as we want, for less than we pay for cell phone service or for cable television. When most of us think about water, we think of it as though we're the air, infinite and inexhaustible, when for all practical purposes, it's very finite and quite exhaustible.
According to the U.S. Drought Monitor, many of the western U.S. states are in some stage of drought, and in some of those states, it is extreme or exceptional drought. Some of the hardest hit areas are in Arizona, where the Drought Monitor shows no normal precipitation anywhere in the state. The state has recently been hit by dust storms, or haboobs, so large they swallow cities. And despite heavy rains in California, from time to time, every square mile of the state was recently in some stage of drought, with more than 14% of Central California's agricultural heartland in the most extreme state of, quote, exceptional drought.
I think that we're looking at a new, drier future. We're looking at a new normal. We've got severe drought in California. We have very significant drought in the Klamath River Basin in Oregon and California. Record low levels of precipitation and river flow in the Rio Grande. There have been drought issues in the southeast United States. That's really unprecedented, and so this is not just a localized problem.
Another state feeling the effects of drought is South Carolina. Farmers say their livelihoods depend more on water than other industries.
Water is probably the most valuable commodity that we have, and it's probably funny to hear me say commodity, but it truly is. Hey girls, how are we doing? We're different than any other industry. As use the example a lot that I can't turn off the lights on Friday afternoon and go home and come back Monday and turn them on and things are okay. If we're in a situation where we don't have water, the animals or the crop that we're growing to feed the animals will just simply die.
This country right now is hurting over oil, but we can get by with a lot less oil. If I had to, I could ride a bicycle a little bit, or I could walk a little further. But I don't know any way that this country is going to survive if we do not take the steps necessary now to protect this resource.
Water shortages are so critical in South Carolina, the state filed what is called a case of original jurisdiction in 2007 against its neighbor to the north. Instead of taking North Carolina to state or federal district court, it sued in the Supreme Court over use of water from the Catawba River. South Carolina claimed North Carolina was drawing more than its fair share of water from the river both states use for hydroelectric power and water supplies. The justices agreed South Carolina had a viable claim, but kicked it over to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to divide up the water and hydroelectric power. The states eventually settled to work together. Other eastern states are also battling over water. Georgia is suing Tennessee for access to the Tennessee River's drinking water. In California, the lack of rain is so serious that in early 2014, President Obama visited drought-stricken California and pledged $183 million for drought relief programs. He also created 7 regional climate hubs to help farmers and rural communities respond to the risks of climate change.
California is our biggest economy. California is our biggest agricultural producer. So what happens here matters to every working American, right down to the cost of food that you put on your table. And everybody, from farmers to industry to residential areas to the north of California and the south of California and every place in between, as well as the entire western region, are going to have to start rethinking how we approach water for decades to come. So I want to make sure that every Californian knows your country is going to be there for you when you need it this year, but we're going to have to all work together in the years to come to make sure that we address this challenge and leave this incredible land and bounty to our children, our grandchildren, in at least as good shape as we found it.
Controversy over water in the Southwest is nothing new. An old Western saying goes, quote, "Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over." But in the latter days of the Old West, there were just more than 2 million people living in the Southwest water basin. Now there are almost 40 million. Much of the increase was driven by legal and illegal immigration. Mexicans in particular flee a country that is drier still than the U.S., killing Mexico's agriculture industry and lots of jobs. In the late 1800s, attempts were made to harness the Colorado River to supply irrigation for farmers and for settlement. However, a massive flood in 1905, destroying everything in its way, proved the river needed to be controlled. To settle claims to the water in 1922, then Commerce Secretary Herbert Hoover assembled delegates and divided the Colorado River's water among 7 states. The Colorado River Compact divided the river into the lower river basin, which served Arizona, California, and Nevada, and the upper river basin, which included New Mexico, Wyoming, Utah, and Colorado. And years later, Mexico was added. It was the first example in history of a comprehensive interstate compact to deal with allocation of water rights.
The thunder of man's determination to conquer the Colorado reverberated between the sheer cliffs of Black Canyon as construction got underway.
The Hoover Dam was built to control floods, provide irrigation, and produce hydroelectric power. It broke construction in 1931 across 2 states, Arizona and Nevada.
This modern civil engineering wonder stood completed 2½ years ahead of schedule.
The building of the dam also created Lake Mead, a holding place for water for the basin region, and one of the largest man-made lakes in the world, creating 550 miles of shoreline and covering 247 square miles of land. Lake Mead and downstream releases from the dam provide water for cities and for irrigation to farmers in the upper and lower river basin states. At the dam's base are huge turbines that drive water to produce electricity for 3 states, Nevada, Arizona, and mainly California. But years of drought and record population growth in the Southwest, fueled in large part by immigration, have siphoned off the once plentiful 1,450-mile winding Colorado River. The river, which once flowed all the way to Mexico and emptied into the Gulf of California, dries up before it ever gets there. To bring attention to the unsustainable demands draining the river, actor and director Robert Redford teamed with his son to film a documentary about the Colorado.
With populations in the region expected to reach 50 million by 2050, temperatures rising and precipitation patterns becoming more erratic, demand will outpace supply unless we embrace a new water ethic. One that questions not only how we use water, but how it affects the world around us.
Redford also launched a campaign with RaiseTheRiver.org, urging people to help reconnect the Colorado River with the Gulf of Mexico.
The Colorado River is one of the most loved and hardest working rivers in the world. But we've overused it. Most years the river dries up even before it reaches the sea. By adding just a small amount of water to the river's flow, we can help bring life back to the wetlands and marshes in the delta. So please, would you join me in RaiseTheRiver.org and find out how you can get involved?
That's exactly what started to happen in early 2014. In a 3-year partnership between the U.S. and Mexico, water from the Colorado was released at the U.S.-Mexico border into the riverbed, where water hasn't flowed regularly since 1960. The goal? To reintroduce water into the delta and begin to restore key parts of its ecosystem.